Hello, thank you for taking a look at this little PowerPoint that I put together. The folks at Ali have asked me if I could put something together that might help us deal, psychologically at least, with the coronavirus and what's going on these days. Some of you may know me. You've perhaps come to some of my other talks. Others of you who have not seen me before, I'm Dr. Craig Neumann, professor in the clinical psychology program at the University of North Texas. And so today, what I have to show you is how we can cope psychologically. And this isn't just putting on a pair of rose-colored glasses and pretending everything's okay. No, instead, what I hope to show you is that this is about how we respond to stress. Stress affects us, not only psychologically, but it affects our body too. And how we psychologically respond to stress has an influence on not only our emotional well-being, but also our physical well-being. And so let's work our way through this presentation today. I think I have about 15 or so slides. I'm not sure exactly how long this will go, maybe about 20 minutes, but I hope you find it to be of some value. So the interesting thing with stress is that it affects our immune system. Some of you may know that when we're stressed, we open ourselves up to be at greater risk to infection, to catching something like the influenza or the coronavirus. And this is because the stress response system and our immune system are inversely related. Now, nature has designed this in a way that when something sudden happens, there's some sort of stressor. Something in the environment forces an adjustive demand upon us. We have to act quickly. Our stress response system will become upregulated and activated. Technically, it's called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system. What it means is that it will upregulate a stress hormone called cortisol, and that prepares us for action. And that's a good thing. But that's very resource demand heavy. And so the immune system can't at the same time be also active. Nature has decided that if we're injured or if there's some extreme emergency, it's better for us to be activated and run, even though we may be wounded, to get up and run and escape. And then later, when the stressor has been dealt with, we've removed ourselves from that situation, then the immune system can be activated. So when we're stressed, the immune system is naturally depressed. Now, we have to be activated during times of stress. Being responsive to the environment and the adjustive demands that are placed upon us are necessary. But how we psychologically respond to stress can play a role whether we feel incapacitated by that stress or whether we feel energized but yet capable of dealing with that stressor. To the extent that we can manage the stress response, which is adaptive and necessary, but to the extent that we can manage it, we could potentially then also not adversely downregulate the immune system. So it's a homeostasis. It's trying to create a balance between the two. So responding to stress and adjustive demands in an adaptive way is very much a part of resilience. Resilience is not some trait you're born with or not born with. Resilience is a complex psychological and behavioral sort of construct that has to do with how we adapt, how we bounce back when we've been pressed, challenged by something in the world. And so resilience is a means of using resilience strategies are a means of being able to potentially positively affect both the stress response system and the immune system. And let me show you how that might be. So keep in mind that resilience is not something that's built into your biology necessarily, but it's a set of strategies that we'll go through that help us to bounce back from negative emotional experiences and to do so in a flexible, adaptive way to meet the demands of a stressful experience. So these are the domains of resilience. There's interpersonal aspects of resilience, and there's intrapersonal, within the person and between persons. And so for the interpersonal domain, family cohesion, right? The more cohesive, the more supportive, the more loving, the more harmonious we are in family situations or in other sort of close groups, that helps us to be more resilient. Social support, right? You can't make it to the grocery store, but maybe your neighbor can. And so social support between people can help us to be more or less resilient. There's also intra or within the person domains of resilience. And this has to do with social competence. So your ability to get along with people. It's perhaps not easy to go into a supermarket these days. People are stressed. People are a little ornery, perhaps. And the skill with which you can interact, your social competence skills, your interpersonal skills, play a role in how resilient you can be in stressful situation like being in the grocery store these days. Also within the person, another resilience component is personal structure. This has to do with how you structure your environment. Regular sleep, good diet, some exercise, whatever fits with your lifestyle. That the regularity, the predictability of your personal structure is helpful in helping you to be more resilient. And then personal competence, and this is where I'll spend some more time talking about this component of resilience, is your belief in your ability to adapt. No matter what. You may not know how you're going to adapt, how you're going to deal with the situation. But your sense that I can do this is very, very important. That sense, that felt sense of I can cope. Don't know how necessarily in a given situation, but I know I'll find a way. That is very, very important. So let's go through this a little bit more in terms of personal competence. How would you respond to these items? So the first one is, regardless of what happens to me, I believe I can control my reaction to it. Now think about that. Minor things, perhaps everyone says, yeah. But what about when life's more challenging? You go to the grocery store. There's no meat there. God forbid, you have to buy some fish. The car breaks down. You can't get to the store. Regardless of what happens to me, I believe I can control my reaction to it. And this is not only in terms of your thoughts, but this has a lot to do with terms of your feelings. When something dramatic and stressful happens, we are all going to have some negative emotional experiences. Believing that we can deal with our emotional reactions to stressful experiences is a very important component of being resilient, not only psychologically, but biologically, and I'll show you. Here's another one, the second item. I believe I can grow in positive ways by dealing with difficult situations. So the idea here is not only that you can handle a situation, you can control your reaction, can adapt to a situation, but a challenging situation, a stressful situation, the way you adapt may actually lead to growth, positive growth. There might be changes to your diet, depending on what's available and not available at the grocery store. Perhaps you start to assemble a diet that actually is a little healthier. Perhaps dealing with stressful situations and knowing that we can handle it emotionally helps you to grow as an individual, as becoming more emotionally resilient. So resilience is not only how we adapt to situations in a flexible, healthful way, but that we can potentially even grow from dealing with challenging situations, being more resilient. And in some cases, unfortunately, we have a loss. So this third item, I actively look for ways to replace the losses I encounter in life. There's a lot of loss that we're experiencing these days. The ability to just go out and be social, just go to a movie. Do we just put up with that loss? Just sort of stiff upper lip? Or do we find a way to actually replace other valued things, other things in our life that help us to be resilient? Maybe we get back to those books that we wanted to read for some time that we haven't. So all these things, being able to having a belief, a felt capacity that you can control your reactions to challenging, stressful situations, thinking that these challenging situations could actually lead to growth, and replacing some of the things that we might lose because of stressful situations with other things that can help us to be more resilient, more happy, more healthy. So mindfulness is a very important resilience strategy. Mindfulness plays a fundamental role in helping us to emotionally cope with stressful situations, and mindfulness actually increases our immune system function. So mindfulness is this important component of thinking that you can control your reaction to situations, that you might be able to grow from stressful situations. Practicing being mindful in a moment-to-moment, state-like practice, or engaging in mindfulness meditation as a means of increasing your psychological and biological capacity to stressful situations. Let's go through the data. Well, first, before that, let me give you, so mindfulness has become a very popular topic, but just let me give you a brief overview. Being mindful is being able to put yourself in a present state of awareness. So this refers to an ability to observe what's going on outside of you. What are the smells that are out there? How does the sunlight hit the tree, leaves in the tree? What are the sounds that you hear at a present moment? Being able to observe closely in a present moment. Describing, being able to describe, in this case, your inner experiences. And again, perhaps with respect to stressful situations. How does this make me feel? Can I accurately describe the emotions that I'm experiencing? Being able to accurately describe your inner experiences. And in doing this, in trying to be mindful in a given moment, or again, trying to practice mindful meditation, acting with awareness. So the opposite of a wandering mind, the opposite of sort of losing track of what you were doing, mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness has to do with, let's say you're making your coffee. Having a deep awareness. It may sound silly, but a deep awareness of what you're doing, each step, taking the cup, placing it on the counter. How did that sound? What are the feelings that I'm having as I'm anticipating this morning coffee? So these are important components of mindfulness. But perhaps the two most important aspects of mindfulness is while you're observing, describing your experiences, what's going on around you, is trying not to be reactive to your inner experiences. When we have when we have some sort of psychological response to a stressful experience, that's going to generate some anxiety, some negative mood states. But the key to being mindful in those situations is not being reactive to it, observing it, describing it, being aware of it, but not being reactive to it. That's very, very important. And that will turn out to be very important for not only our human psychology, but our neurobiology. And also, not judging. When things don't go well, and we get angry or hostile or upset, frustrated, that's natural. Our emotions are natural. You can't shut them off. But one of the keys to being mindful is not judging those inner experiences. So if you're having some anxiety due to what's going on with the coronavirus, be aware of it, but don't be reactive to it and don't judge it. A thought is just a thought. An emotion is just an emotion. They could be telling us something, but we don't have to have our emotions pulling us by the nose. Rather, it's important for us to sort of observe, examine, but not be reactive and judgmental to our experiences. Our experiences may be guiding us, helping us to guide our behavior in some way, but the key is not being reactive or judgmental towards your experiences. So, mindfulness, doing it in a moment-to-moment, practicing in a moment-to-moment sort of way, or doing 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day of mindfulness meditation. And we'll get to a simple way of practicing mindfulness meditation towards the end of this presentation. But regular practice of mindfulness increases psychological well-being. Now let's get to the data. This is a study of hundreds of patients going through a medical facility. And so these people have significant medical issues. Along with that, often they have significant anxiety and depression. And they ask people to engage in mindfulness meditation for just 5-10 minutes a day, regularly, like you brush your teeth every day. And what they find is that the amount of practice of mindfulness meditation, it increased psychological well-being. But what's the most telling in this figure here is the more people practiced, the more they were able to increase their ability to be mindful. And that ability to observe, describe, act with awareness, be non-judgmental, be non-reactive to our inner experiences, that increase in mindfulness was the strongest predictor of an increase in psychological well-being. And believe me, try it. 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking. 2 weeks. 10 minutes a day. You send me an email if I'm wrong. You will see an increase in psychological well-being. The evidence is there, and I'll show you neurobiologically why you will feel an increase in psychological well-being. So mindfulness practice increases biological well-being. This graphic here is a summary of a systematic review of randomized clinical trials. Now, this is important. This isn't just, hey, you go do this for a while, let's see if it changes you. No. In the same way that scientists do drug trials to determine if a vaccine for coronavirus is effective, we can't just do it overnight. It's not the way science works. The way it has to be done is individuals have to be randomly assigned to a treatment group and another group of individuals randomly assigned to a placebo or non-treatment group. Why? Because things like vaccines and practicing mindfulness, those hopefully have a positive effect, but there's a lot of other factors that could also influence the results. And so by randomly assigning people to treatment versus no treatment conditions, we can say in the strongest way possible that the treatment had an effect. And so in reviewing the studies the randomized controlled trial studies, the RCTs, on the practice of mindfulness, what they find is that it significantly decreased inflammation. I won't go into a long lecture on inflammation, but inflammation in the short term is good. That means there's been an activated immune response. If you twist your ankle and your ankle puffs up, that's your body trying to repair it. But long-term inflammation does damage to us. And so mindfulness has a significant causal effect on decreasing inflammation within our body. The other thing is that it increases aspects of our immune system. So regular practice of mindfulness significantly increased immune system activity. Now, how about that? We can't do a lot these days with this coronavirus. We're stuck in our homes, but yet we got to go out, and there's still things that are going to stress us. And as we feel the experience of stress, that suppresses our immune system. But by being mindful and developing a felt sense that I can cope, that will reduce your sense of stress. And by practicing regular mindfulness, that increases your immune system functioning. And then the last thing that's pretty interesting, I have to do some long-term studies on this one, but there's evidence that regular practice of mindfulness likely reduces the pace of aging. What it does technically is it increases an enzyme that has to do with these end caps on our chromosomes called telomeres. So regular practice of mindfulness increases the enzyme that helps to generate increased length on these telomeres that protect the DNA on our chromosomes. And this likely helps to reduce the pace of aging. So clearly, based on RCTs, randomized clinical trials, regular practice of mindfulness is good for your body. Mindfulness does this by increasing neurobiological function. When you're being mindful, you're engaging your brain in a certain way. And the evidence is clear now, it increases a certain type of neurobiological function. In particular, increases in the left prefrontal cortex, the most advanced part of our brain. And why that's important is because in that left prefrontal area of our brain, that's linked to positive emotion. And the science also suggests that with an increased activation of this part of our brain, not only is there an increase in positive emotion, but there's an increase in immune system functioning. So here's a study done in 2003, Richard Davidson. This is a guy who studies Tibetan monks, very, very respected researcher. And this is a study where people, again, were randomly assigned to the treatment condition or not. And they were measuring brain activity in terms of electrical EEG, electrical encephalogram methodology. And what they find after 8 weeks of regular practice of mindfulness meditation, what they find is in the treatment group, there's a significant increase in this part of the brain, the left prefrontal part of the brain. That's good. Then they injected these individuals with the influenza virus. And what they found is the group of people who were meditating regularly, mindfulness meditation, there was an increase in antibodies. There was an increase in their immune response. And the most fascinating thing about this study is that increases in that left prefrontal part of the brain were associated with increases in the antibody response. So here we have it all coming together. Regular practice of mindfulness helps to give you a stronger felt sense that I can cope. It increases positive emotion. And how does it do that? It does that by increasing part of our brain that is intimately linked with positive emotion. And as we practice mindfulness more, that increase in that part of the brain is associated with an increase in immune response. Well, that's a study from 2003. It's important. It's a very important study. But does it replicate? That's one of the keys with science. Not only can you find it once, but can you find it a second time? And yes, you can. This is a study done in 2015. One of the authors here is Michael Posner, just a renowned neuroscientist. These days, sometimes it seems there's some people that don't trust science for some reason. I don't know why. Getting rid of scientists in our government. I don't think we go forward as a society by getting rid of the scientists. Scientists are the ones that show us what's really going on in the world. So in this study, again, individuals were randomly assigned to a mindfulness-based treatment. In this case, they also involved aspects of bodily movement, yoga, simple yoga, not that complex stuff, standing on your head stuff, but simple yoga, and mindfulness meditation. And they compared that mindfulness group to a group of individuals who just had simply relaxation training. And this could be like progressive muscle relaxation, where you tighten some muscles and relax, and tighten some muscles and relax. So it was a viable alternative type of comparison. And what they find, this is brain imaging now, what they find is the meditation group shows, as we would predict, increased left hemisphere activation. So it works. It works. Regular practice of mindfulness, like brushing our teeth every day. You know that feeling when your teeth feel fresh? Same thing from mindfulness. Regular practice of mindfulness increases a sense of positive emotion. Other research suggests it increases your capacity to regulate your emotions. Why does it work? Because it activates a part of our brain linked to the generation and experience of positive emotion. And the added benefit of those increases of positive emotion, those increases in ability to regulate our emotion, augment our response to stress. And by showing a more adaptive response to stress, we are potentially helping our immune system. Regular practice of mindfulness increases immune system function. How do we do it? You don't have to go to Tibet and learn from the Tibetan monks, although that wouldn't be a bad thing to do in my estimation. But we can simply do it by sitting quietly and counting our breaths. Let's see how that works. So this is a study. Again, RCT, randomized clinical trial, where individuals were simply asked to engage in mindfulness meditation, but in this case, by simply counting their breaths. Let's try this for a minute. Close our eyes. Deep breath in. Breath out. That's one. Again. That's two. Now let's just breathe as we would breathe. 3. 4. And all we need to do is to do this to, say, to a count of 10. Put a timer on somewhere, your phone or egg timer. Do as long as you'd like to do, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You're going to find this is enjoyable as you do it regularly, and you're going to want to do it for longer periods of time. 20 minutes is a great meditation. Just simply count your breaths up to 10 and then start again. Count to 10 and start again. If a thought comes, what do? You don't react to it. You don't judge it. You may observe it, but just simply let that thought come like a cloud that's being blown by on a summer day. Stay focused on your breath counting. Now, what they find is that counting accuracy, as the participants became better in accurately counting their breaths, they were being measured physiologically so they could measure how accurate people were. What they find is that increased accuracy in breath counting was associated with an increase in mindfulness, in present state awareness. Now, did it have an additional benefit? Yes, it did. What they found, I don't like the way this graph is. I would have put positive up and negative down, but okay, here's the way this graph goes. Increase on this y-axis means there was an increase in negative emotions, and a decrease on this y-axis means there was an increase in positive emotions. And so what they found is with increased accuracy in breath counting, there is an increase in positive emotion. Well, we knew that. We knew that from the previous studies. Mindfulness increases positive emotion. It increases our ability to be more responsive and adaptive to stress. It increases our neurobiology so that we are more resilient. So, there's a clear relationship between stress and the immune system. It's homeostatic. When we have a strong stress response, that impairs the immune system function. Being more resilient, relying on cohesive groups of individuals, loving, supportive groups of individuals, relying on individuals for social support, being a socially supportive individual, being more effective in our interpersonal relationships, structuring our environment so that we are more physically and psychologically resilient, and trusting in our capacity to cope. These elements of resilience play a role in augmenting the stress immune system homeostasis. And I hope that I've shown you to have some sense that mindfulness is an ideal resilience strategy for increasing positive emotion, increasing aspects of our neurobiology, and ultimately helping us to be healthier and happy people. So thank you for listening.